Pops in a pod. Pops in a pod.
Hey guys, welcome back to Pops in a Pod. This is Nadir Pop.
And Peter Pop. We're recording this episode in the last day of July. And if you're a parent, you know what time of the year it is, right? I mean, it's the time when everyone is sharing results, marks, what have you, of their kids, nephew, someone who lives in their neighborhood. And, all teachers are kind of boasting about their students, right? And why not? Because here in India, these are a big deal. I mean, especially the results of the 10th and 12th grade. They determine your future or not really, right? Nadir, what's your thoughts?
10th, 12th, graduation, post graduation, master's, PhD. I think the list just keeps going on, right? The more and more um, we embrace modernity. In fact, it takes me back to any parent, right? It's like, beta, बस 10th पास कर ले, फिर तो ऐश ही ऐश है. Then 12th will come. बेटा 12th पास कर ले, फिर तुझे जो करना है तो कर. Then graduation comes, and then the list just doesn't end. Right? Today also, within our jobs, we get a scorecard by the end of the year in terms of our performance, and we have to mark ourselves. That's the only difference. So marks will never leave our lives, but I guess the government and certain entities are working towards I don't know, hopefully eliminating the process and getting into slightly more merit based process. So yeah.
Yeah, and my sons has started school back again, and I'm on the parents WhatsApp group, right? So when the results for the 10th grade ICSE were declared, like there were pictures, and images floating around, and I noticed a couple of things, right? The first thing is that the topper in the school got, get this, 98.5%.
I have a very interesting story, 98.5, now that you've said it. During the lockdown, my neighbor's son um, got his 10th standard results. And obviously, like any Indian household, we received a box of mithai. And we were like, Arey, what happened? And he's like, oh, my son, he got 97% in board. And we're like, wow, 97. We have a genius kid in our building and we didn't know about it, right? And then a couple of days later, suddenly we get these messages of far-flung relatives and some of their niece nephew kids, right? And they're like, oh, do you know that one's daughter got 96 and that one's son got 98 and that one's son got 97? I said, how is it that everyone in our circle is getting scores over 95? That makes no sense. So today I think the value of being a 90 percentile or getting 90 above marks is no longer a big deal, right? It's like that quintessential cliched story that we keep hearing. You should have got 100, right? Why did you get 99? And somewhere I think it's already happening. It's a reality now. So if you get a 99, yeah, you're not good enough. You got a 100. Oh yeah, okay, got a 100, right? Maybe you should get 101 for good handwriting or something next time. The barrier will the barrier will always keep going up.
Yeah, I mean, I had a similar reaction, right? And I went into, I'm doing air quotes, the Indian uncle mode, where I was like, back in my day. But, another thing that struck me about the image that I got, right, on WhatsApp was when I was they put like the top five students, their name, and all of the marks that they got in the rank. I realized that within the top three students, there was just one mark separating each of them. And I was just like, wow, what's their life going to be like, right? Like in the future, is it going to be like, if I just got that one mark more, I could have been the topper. I would have not been third, I would have been second. Like it was just literally like one mark. And I was like, wow, like at a very young age, they're just like realizing the impact of what one mark could really have on your life.
This one mark difference, I really know what this one mark difference feels like. I remember back in when I was in the 7th or the 8th standard, and it was one of those midterm exams. So 50-mark paper. And I don't remember what paper. Must be some very objective based paper because I got 50 on 50. Right? I was like, wow, 50 on 50. Right? It was a big deal. And a lot of kids in that subject scored really well. I think the average was about 40-41. So everyone did well, right? So it wasn't just like me out of nowhere got 50 on 50. And there was this girl, extremely competitive. She used to always be there in the top 3 ranks. And she saw my paper, and obviously my paper became a template, right, for anyone to check their answers where they went wrong. So she was checking each and every answer, that how did she go and where did she go wrong. And the one where she was marked wrong, turns out that her answer and my answer were the same, but I got a mark for it and she didn't. So she took my paper to the teacher and said that, why does he deserve to get that 1 mark, because we wrote the same answer. And the teacher saw it and was like, oh yeah, you're right. So then she said, okay, so do I get 1 mark? So do I get a 50 on 50? It's like, no, actually he gets 49 because the answer's wrong.
Oh man.
So suddenly I got a 4. And she took my paper. I didn't even bother. And I come back and it's all scribbled and it says 49 and 50. I said, what happened? It's like, your answer's wrong. I said, okay, thank. I didn't react that time, because when a 49 was like, okay, like, it's almost a 50. And I was just like, and she just felt so good about the fact that I lost a mark and not that she gained one, right?
Wow.
So I totally get it. I totally get this whole 1 mark business. I get it because I've lived it.
And I like that all these years later you can laugh about it, right? Because that's kind of what I was thinking about, right? Because when I was thinking about like the impact that marks have had on our life, it kind of brought back to memory the episode we did a couple of years ago, right? Where we talked about marks, just the impact. And what we did also was we kind of looked at it from the perspective of people who are now like in their career working for a few years, because we had a total of 5 guests on this episode. So a quick disclaimer, this episode was recorded in 2020 when Nadir and I didn't have like the mics that we're using right now to record. And also our guests were recording on various devices at home. So apologies for everyone tuning in now and listening to it. The audio quality is not to our usual mark. But, all of that aside, let's dive straight into our episode. What we decided was, let's not only get their perspective, but also, get them to give a tidbit of advice to their younger selves. I mean, what would they look back and say to their younger selves about their journey, their experience so far? So our first guest is a really good friend. I also co-host a podcast with him, but this time on heavy metal. It's called Horns Up. So here's Animesh.
So this is going to sound super gloaty and self-patronizing, but by the age of 15, I had kind of figured out that academic marks weren't the be-all and end-all of all existence. And here's the context behind it. Even though I was a good student, thankfully my parents and my school didn't really pressurize me to top, and instead encouraged me to do as much as I could and enjoyed, not just academically, but also in extracurriculars. So much so that I was rewarded for being an all-rounder and not only chasing academic marks. What really validated the marks thing was an aptitude test that my mum made me take, and the result was the counselor telling me that, hey, you can do anything you put your mind to. In all of this, looking back at it, I think that I had unknowingly realized that these numbers on my report card helped keep my parents, my family, and my school happy to let me do my own shit. So I ended up using marks to set targets for myself. Like if X was a decent result, I'd have to work X amounts for it. Or if I needed Y to get into the college I want because that's the cutoff, I'd have to work Y amounts for it. That's just the way our academic system works. Now, 15-year-old me doesn't know that it's also the way most systems work. Like you have to work to get the corporate results you want, or get what you want out of a relationship, or almost everything else. That's just the way how 95% of all systems work. So here's the advice to 15-year-old me, and this sounds super preachy. Marks are just a tool or a device to help you stay the course. What really matters is figuring out what you're good at, what you enjoy, and what you want. And if you set out to achieve that, you'll naturally set goals for yourself, and hence the marks or results of how you achieve those goals will help you stay the course. Now, if you don't have the aptitude for academics, and that's completely fine, your academic marks do not matter. But do marks as a concept matter? Yes, they do help. So since this is Pops in a Pod, Nadir Pop and Peter Pop, I may be overstepping my boundaries, but here's a thought. I'm guessing the question to think about for all parents is, can you help your kids figure out what they want? Is 15 the age they should be figuring that out? Is it 10? Is it 20? I think that those are extremely subjective questions. And honestly, I think it warrants a different answer for each kid. What do you guys think?
Animesh totally nailed it on the head, and I really love the last point in the question he asked all our listeners, and we should definitely revisit later. But coming to what he said about extracurricular activities, right? I mean, when I look back at my school career of sorts, I was kind of like, what would you call a jack of all trades? I mean, I took part in sports, like I mentioned earlier, whether it was quizzes, debates, everything I took part in. But one thing I realized what I was really good at was basketball. And through that, I had a chance of playing state level. For me at that point, it was, hey, I'm not that great at academics, but I'm good at sports. So that'll be my ticket into, the best college in Bombay. And in here in Bombay, at least we have the sports quota. I'm sure it's in the rest of India also. So I was already talking to some colleges that, using my sports, can I get in, with an additional percentage in there, and I'll represent your college in the competitions, etc. But what at that time I didn't realize, at that age, was the lessons that I would get from, that basketball games I played. I mean, things like teamwork, communication, those are priceless kind of lessons that go beyond, and like 20 odd years later I'm still really grateful for all those things I learned. So yeah, definitely, extracurricular activities are a very, very important aspect which we don't consider, unfortunately.
Absolutely, yeah. What Animesh said very rightly is that yes, academics has its place in our lives, in our society, but all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy, right? You need to have that balance. You have to strike that balance at some point. It's just unfortunate that in our country, the way that our education system is built, and we've been a part of it, hence we can have this commentary. The concentration is too much on books and very very less maybe outside those books. What's really happening in the world. Things are changing now. I'll be very candid, very honest that things are changing with new boards, school boards coming in and trying to achieve that balance. But I think for the majority, it's still about books. It's still about doing engineering or business or MBA or being a doctor or whatever it is. And somewhere along the way, you kind of lose your perspective on other things, right? Extracurricular activities, whether it's sports, elocution, performing arts, music. There are so many other things, and we see that that has such a bright future as well. And my parents also, especially my mom, really pushed me in various other things, because I think as a student, she herself was quite involved with many other activities, whether it was table tennis or whether it was other performing arts, and she always saw herself. It was just unfortunate that she never could do much with it. But she tried to make sure that at least we also got exposure in that. She took me for swimming classes, and I learned swimming. I hate water. And so actually, I was like, I don't care about, swimming or learning to swim. I don't really care, honestly. But she was there. She was there to support, and she ensured that at least I learned. And today, given the opportunity, I enjoy swimming. There were so many other sports that I was involved in apart from your regular books and academics. And I could see the difference, because what you brought up about the whole teamwork and everything, that's not going to happen just by having your head stuck in books, right?
Yeah.
Whether you're doing, even if you're doing your group projects or anything, of course teamwork will come in, or group studies, sorry, not group projects, group studies. It's still at an individual learning, because it's your individual capacity to absorb things. But the minute you get into team related activities like sports, there's so many things that you learn, right? You learn team politics also at the same time, who to trust, who not to trust. And that is, I think, the building blocks of life. Honestly, if you don't pick it up early in your life, it's going to get very difficult for you to understand people, I feel. And I think that's so important. There has to be a world outside your books, and you've got to look beyond marks at some point. yes, marks has its benefits, but you need to look beyond it at some point. And that's where I believe extracurricular activities and other activities most definitely come into.
Yeah, Nadir, I completely agree with you. I mean, look at how we're right now working, right? You're all working remotely. And at the end of the day, you're still in teams. Unless you have, like, the basics skills set in their place, it'll be really tough. I mean, nobody works, as an individual anymore, right? You're all connected. You're all dealing with teams who are remotely, not only in India, but around the world. So I feel that's where, a focus on, team group work in academics will definitely help, and in a long run, because of course, it takes a while to develop such skills. uh, I'm sure, in today's day and age, with, again, schools being done online, schools are kind of tweaking their curriculum or getting them geared up for it. But yeah, it's going to be quite an interesting thing to revisit this or look at this like 6 months or a year from now, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Moving on to our next guest. Here's another good friend of mine, and he's been listening to the podcast for quite some time also now, and it's great to have him contribute. He's a co-founder for a language startup from Bangalore. Here's Denzil Lewis.
Hello, me. I am you. I come from the future. July 2020 to be precise. I know, you're going to lose your hair. But that's not a big deal. Don't worry about it. Being bald and bearded is way cooler, believe you me. Obviously, I can't tell you anything of consequence like stock market stuff and outcomes of sporting events because, that will cause all kinds of crazy paradoxes in this part of our multiverse. Not worth it, bro. The future is going to be, let's just say, interesting. You're about to go on this amazing learning journey. You're going to be what the cool kids on LinkedIn call a lifelong learner. You will grow bored of being told what to learn by institutions and will instead seek out esoteric stuff that interests you. You will have tons of fun conducting your own studies in the future. My own future self from 2040 has told me there is much more mind-blowing stuff down the road. It's going to be a fun ride. I can't wait. So, I just came by to tell you that don't worry too much about those marks. No one has asked me my marks in all of the 3 proper job interviews that I've done so far. They don't mean anything. Yeah, I know, right? Nonetheless, I want to stress that this does not mean that you should play video games and read those sci-fi novels instead of studying for the exams. Getting those marks will help you get into amazing colleges and meet awesome people. I am dead serious about this. If you don't do it, I am in so much trouble here in the future. So promise me you will keep doing what you do. Just take it easy though. Don't stress too much about it. Keep it cool. Alright? See ya in the future.
Such a crucial point Denzil raised. I mean, I love the treatment of his take. Very theatrical, very dramatic. It really did sound as if Denzil's come from the future to warn us about the world or something. So I quite like that. See, that's what I'm talking about, right? That's exactly what I'm talking about. You won't find all of that in books. That's something that you'll probably experience when you maybe consume a lot of other content pieces, right? Television, cinema, whatever it is. It's not what you're going to find in books. So that's really cool. But he brought up a very crucial point, and I'm so glad he addressed it, which is stress. The kind of pressure that you take, especially at that age, Peter. It is so difficult, and as I said, our system is designed where I think pressure kind of comes in, and there are few people who probably learn from this, that okay, this is the kind of pressure that I have to meet when I'm studying or whatever it is. But I remember I used to get stressed very easily, especially during exam, and that's probably why I ended up being a little careless also in my exam. I knew my stuff. Don't get me wrong, I knew my stuff, but it's just that sometimes you just blank out, right? Sometimes you put so much pressure on your brain, either whether that's through lack of sleep, or you just don't feel hungry, you don't have a decent breakfast, and go and take your exam. There are so many factors to it that it's just because your sole concentration is on that paper, that I have to ace it, or I have to get so many marks, or this is my benchmark to do. That's just taking on too much pressure, right? That's self pressure, and it's a real thing, because you're constantly comparing yourself to others, and it's very human, Peter. Let's face it, that I don't think any single person today can say that I'm very content with my life and I don't look at others and how they live their lives, right? Especially at that very impressionable age. So that's where the stress and the pressure comes, that if he or she can have so much because they work so hard, then maybe I can do it too. And then you kind of take that upon yourself. You get yourself completely bogged down without ever realizing the fact that maybe that is not what you are made to do. Where do you think one needs to start realizing that, hey, this is not for me? Maths is not for me, computers is not for me. Like, I realized, I think in the 9th or 10th and the computers is not for me. That is not something that I'm going to pursue. There is no point putting so much pressure on myself to do something where everyone around me is doing, right? IT and the revolution in computer science or whatever. Like, I don't want to do it. I don't care. It's just not for me. And I think I told my dad also that that's it. I don't want to do this. So what do you think, Peter? At what point do you need to realize this?
I mean, I completely get where you're coming from with stress, because I think it was one of those things around the years we grew up, right? And it wasn't, uh, individuals or things like that. It was just the kind of society or the kind of thing that you fit in. Like, I clearly remember that the expectation being that, the smart guys do science, the not so
Yeah.
smart guys do arts. I mean,
Correct.
but
And it was a stigma to do
yeah,
arts.
yeah. It was a
Right?
stigma
Which
to
is
do
so
arts, right?
strange.
So
Exactly. It was like, not only that, Peter, I'll tell you why the stigma have, at least what I've experienced. The reason why it is stigmatized to do arts is not because arts is looked down upon as a lesser vocation. To a lot of people, arts equal to girls do arts,
yeah,
boys don't do art. And at that time, it kind of stuck in my head as girls do arts. How can I do arts? No, it's not worth it. And my God, it took me so many years to cleanse that thought from my system, that ultimately I got into arts, right? So are you. Marketing is a form of art. It's a creative process. You need to have, there are some people who look at marketing as numbers, and there are some people who have to create things. I've been an out and out media person. It's arts. And I was like, my God, I think I wasted 3 years of my life or 2 years of my life doing commerce.
yeah. And I think that's where it also lies, right? I mean, at a young age, there is that, and the stress, of course, definitely comes from the dissonance that you feel, right? You're being forced to do something, you don't really enjoy it. The society, or everyone else at large says that you have to do it. I mean, I think when you're talking about computers and stuff, I clearly remember feeling like that about chemistry and physics and all. And I knew, like, by the time I did like my 10th, halfway through, I knew I'd never want to look at all that stuff again, and I never did.
Yeah.
It's been 20 odd years. My life is so much better. You're talking about stress, right? This will tell you a perspective as to how so many years later it still affects a person. So sometimes I have like a dream where I'm back again 14, 15, and I have a Marathi exam and I haven't studied.
Oh, God.
And then like either sometimes I wake up from it, or in my head I'm still trying to rationalize that, wait, I'm a 30 something year old, I don't have to write an exam, what is wrong with me, why am I dreaming about this? But right, it's so like subconsciously entrenched in your mind that it affects you so many years later. But yeah.
No, absolutely. I know exactly what you feel, and I've had those nightmares. I wouldn't call them dreams, but I've had those nightmares before as well for various other subjects. And I think anxiety just has a weird way of creeping into your life from a very young age. And if you don't address it, then I think it's going to become tough for the children, tough for the parents, because now that we are in that role, it's so important for us to recognize the balance for our children. Of course, they have to do it themselves at some point, but we need to recognize it right in the beginning, and somewhere I feel that they need to be taught how to recognize their own passion, especially in a country like India, where the stress is just on, if you do well, you'll make a lot of money, right? It's never been do well so that you can learn more, you can gain more knowledge, and that will help you in your future. No, but the pressure is always अच्छे marks लेके और do extremely well, because then you will make more money.
Yep, that's true.
And of course, if you are very good with academics and see yourself excelling, then by all means, please, you must pursue it, because you probably have, the mind power and the mind space to take that forward. Our next guest is Rohit Mascarehanas. He is from Bangalore and has been working in Delhi for the last 4 years. He works for a telecom company. And from what I understand, he's been a straight A student. I think he's got all the encouragement that he needed from his parents, and at some point he must have realized that, hey, I am good at academics and this is something that I'm going to pursue. So let's hear his perspective on marks and grades.
What I believed when I was in school was, if I didn't have the marks, then I wouldn't be able to amount to anything in life, or be able to contribute to society, or be able to have a comfortable life. And I'd probably end up struggling for the rest of my life. The way I started seeing marks after a certain point of time was that the value of the marks that you get from an exam are only a gate pass. Unfortunately, we live in a world where we are measured by the marks that we get in an exam or in a board exam, and that's the yardstick that colleges and universities choose to ensure that we get the best of the best and attract the best students. When you treat this as a gate pass, then you understand the intrinsic value of your studies is now the marks that you're getting, and you can start focusing on getting those marks. Because if you start focusing on understanding and knowing 100% of everything that you're doing, you might learn knowledge that you may not use later in life, but by learning that knowledge, it may not make you competitive enough to get those high marks in an exam. So that's something you need to understand. And that's something I understood, and that helped me when I applied for my MBA. I treated my GMAT as just a score that was a gate pass for me to get FaceTime for an interview. And that's the way I treated the GMAT. I didn't treat it as anything more than that or anything less than that. It was just a number that I was going to get on an email, and that was going to be my gate pass. That has helped me a lot to understand studies. What I would like to advise my younger self is that understand that the marks that you get, the value of those marks is your gate pass to get you into a better college, a better institution, and probably even a better job later on in life. While you will have to continue working hard, you will get used to it. Continuing to study and putting time into study develops resilience, perseverance, and grit. And by building those habits early in your life, you will be able to manage any future that comes your way.
So here we have a different perspective, and I'm glad we've got a very different perspective. I think Rohit clearly says that marks is only the means to the end, but the important aspect is to acquire knowledge and learn as much as you can. But he clearly has seen the positives in achieving good grades, in achieving high marks. So it's great that we've got the flip side of the marks and grades as well. Don't you think, Peter?
Yeah, so I totally understand what Rohit is talking about, because while I did talk about not enjoying physics and chemistry and things like that, I enrolled in the commerce in school in Abu Dhabi, because that's how they have it, grade 11 and 12 there. And that's when I saw a complete difference in my understanding of the topics. I mean, for the first time I was learning about business, even though I wasn't too great at maths, the algebra, geometry, and all of that, trigonometry. I started doing well in accounting, and my marks or my grades totally shifted. I mean, my parents were like, wow, how are you kind of doing this? Because I was the same kid, and this was like 4 or 5 months later. But of course, that is where I kind of understood that, just like Animesh talked about, right? You put X amount of effort into it and you'll get Y results. So that's when I slowly started developing that, you know what, if I study 50% of my time, I'll get these marks. But if I do 60% or 70%, I'll only get like 5% more. So I started kind of manipulating things or working there. So it worked out for me that way. But yeah, I
That is such
mean,
an interesting thought, yeah, Peter. I really like how you broke it down. That if I put in, this amount of effort, this will be the result. If I double that effort, then the result might not necessarily also double itself. So, uh, and I think it all boils down to self-realization, don't you think?
yeah, I
Because
think,
you need to know, right? At some point, as an individual, you just need to know what is right for you and what isn't.
yeah, I mean, see, that's where you also kind of understand, where your aptitude lies. You're picking up, skills like how do you kind of study or understand topics more. So by then, you've reached a little stage of maturity. And for me, basketball and extracurricular activities uh, were quite important. So, it wasn't a hard toss up as to where I'll spend more time, basketball or studies. So, yeah, so that's where I try to figure out a kind of balance. At the same time, I was really glad that I did way better in my 12th than my 10th. So that's when, my parents thought, hey, if he's done well, here's an opportunity, maybe we should send him abroad to study. And for me, that was easily one of the most defining moments in my life, because not only did I get exposed to world class education, but a complete different, like 180 degrees approach to studying. And that has kind of defined my outlook on academics after that.
But that's great, Peter, because in this case, you also had a realization. Your parents also realize, where your strengths lie. But what do you do about students who don't have parents who are that understanding and will constantly say, like what Rohit was saying, you just have to pass 10. After that, life is settled. You just have to pass 12. After that, life is settled. You just have to graduate and life is settled. You just have to do your MBA and then life is settled. And I like how he said that you can never settle in life. These are hurdles that will keep coming. These are those goalposts that will keep coming, and you have to keep sort of passing them. How you do it is obviously up to you. But today, when we have a better understanding of mental health, I think it's very crucial to really comprehend your child's abilities, right? So let's not wait for the child to probably sort of self realize that, okay, I'm good at this, I'm not good at that. I mean, that's great, you encourage the child to do that, but as a parent, you kind of need to keep your eyes and ears open at every stage of the child's progression when it comes to education, because then you are the first person they will look for in terms of guidance. And I think instead of just pushing the child and say, hey, you need to do better, you need to do better, you need to do better, there has to be some form of encouraging and softer emotions that kind of need to come into play and say, hey, it's okay, it's fine. Maybe you're not really good at that. Maybe you need to concentrate on something else. Or, so what if you fail right now? You'll only do better later on. Learn from your mistakes. Stuff like that. I think that has become very important. And the sooner you realize it as a parent, the better it is for balance in your life, in your child's life, and I think together as a family unit.
Now that there's so much I want to talk about what you just said, but before that, let's quickly hear from our next guest. And I think you know him much better, so why don't you introduce our next guest, Santosh?
I was so excited when I got first introduced to Santosh, and I don't know him for that long. I know him only because of the podcast, and I was introduced to him through a friend, and his name is Santosh, and he made it a point to kind of tell me that my artist name is SKaM, and I was like, whoa man, that's such a cool name to have, SKaM. And he does a lot of things. He's a DJ, he's a visualizer, he's into music production, He's a content developer. He's so many things, completely in the arts and creative field. But I'm going to stop here. I'm going to let him tell his story because, trust me, it's a story that everyone should hear. So, yes, this is Santosh, aka SKaM.
Hi, SKaM. Guess you're trying to study for that 6th standard math exam? Well, let me tell you, you're going to pass it. And besides, it doesn't matter. You're going to quit school next year, anyways. Amazing, right? I know. I wouldn't have believed it either. Amma and Appa are going to be worried for a little bit, but it's going to be okay. Once they understand that you're marching to a different beat, they love you for who you are and are going to support you fully, even at times when they don't fully understand what it is that you do, and encourage you with all your endeavors and are going to be your pillar of strength. I think you know by now that you're an artist at heart and you love computers and technology. Stick with it. Not everyone needs to be a doctor or an engineer, right? Somewhere along the way, after being a computer technician, a production manager for events, a DJ at clubs, and a visual artist at music festivals, you're going to put together all this experience along with your love for the arts and become a creative technologist at your own studio, getting to work with cool technology like virtual reality, and you'll create some awesome art with it as well. You're going to have a pretty exciting life, man, and you're going to start working early at the age of 14. You're going to start off by sticking posters for concerts and events, handing out free samples of biscuits and shampoos. It's a hard day's work, but stick with it. You're going to get some good advice from someone about the dignity of labor and about not being embarrassed to be seen sticking posters or doing odd jobs or handing out samples. Take this in. This is good advice. Be patient, love what you do, and work hard. That's what's going to take you places. Remember those posters you stuck for concerts? Guess what? At some point, you're going to be managing backstage at these concerts and you will get to hang out with the rock gods. You're going to meet the Scorpions, you're going to meet Elton John, MLTR, Aerosmith, and so many other cool artists. Amma and Appa are super proud of the photos with the rock stars and the signed memorabilia that you have. So much so, when Shanta auntie showed them her son's marks card, Amma took out those photos and showed it to her. Man, I wish I could tell you how much you want to score on the math exam, but I really don't remember, and it never mattered. And neither did it matter to Amma and Appa, who love you for who you are and will always be there to support you every step of the way. I'll leave you with this. Be patient, stay humble, work hard, and love what you do. Because you know what? In the end, that's all that matters.
Wow, that was so great to hear. And Nadir, it's exactly what you were talking about earlier, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I feel that, and again, this is again coming from my parents, is that you need as a parent to create that whole relationship with your child where you are the first person that they go to when they have problems. You need to make it easier for them, not be the person that they run away with or they kind of don't want to share their problems with. And yeah, full props to Santosh's parents for supporting him throughout the way. And it at the same time made me reflect and think about my parents and how important they have been in my journey growing up. My sister and I were talking the other day, and the common conclusion we came to is our parents were by far the coolest parents we knew, because they never pressurized us in terms of career options. Yes, my dad did have ambitions for each of us, but he never kind of enforced it on us, saying that you have to do this or you have to go for this. But he created that thing where he said, you know what, you want to do this, explore it, figure it out, because that's the kind of same way I guess his dad was with him, right? So it was him just passing on the same lessons that his dad did. But I still remember my dad never pressurized me, my mom never pressurized me into taking commerce. But the opposite my dad said to me was, hey, your dad's an arts graduate, what's wrong in arts? I mean, you brought up early in the episode, right, that arts was seen as a girl's thing to take. That was the kind of dad I had, where he was like, take commerce, I think you'll do great. And he said, even if you don't do great, we'll figure it out, but you're not in this alone. And that's the kind of relationship I still share with him, because whenever I have an issue, I can still feel free to go back to him and talk to him, even though now I'm a dad. So definitely I would say that the parental support is up there. It's one of the most important things that you need to do, because uh, in India we don't kind of encourage failure, right? And I really have a lot of respect for parents who tell their kids, like you said, you know what, it's okay, you failed, because in every failure there's a lesson. You shouldn't be berating your child, you know, saying really mean and harshful things, because it's not a failure. It's not a failure on your part as a parent. It just didn't work out. It's a new opportunity, and I think seeing that and changing that mindset really, really helps.
It's such an inspirational story, Peter, about Santosh. Honestly, I mean, he dropped out of school in the sixth standard, and I would love to be in the head of his parents at that point in time. That to actually have that strength to encourage your child that it's all right. You don't want to study. Maybe that's not something that you're good at. Maybe you're good at something else, and you kind of need to find it out and figure it out for yourself. And that's just brilliant, right? To have those kind of parents who have that very strong understanding, because trust me, I don't think it happens at all with too many parents. At least I haven't heard such stories, especially what Santosh went through. Like I look at myself. If my daughter had to drop out from the sixth standard, would I be okay with it? And I don't think I would be okay with it. Like, I would be a little upset. I wouldn't be livid, but I would be upset. Somewhere I feel that maybe I did not, do a decent enough job to instill the aspect of education in her, and that's why she feels that she doesn't need any education. And somewhere I feel that I don't know. I wouldn't be too comfortable with the fact that she's dropped out of the sixth standard. But kudos to Santosh and his family. I mean, considering what all he's done in his life and with his life, and he's an artist today. He's in the creative field today, and it's just brilliant, right? It's just fantastic. I mean, what a journey he must have had, and I'd love to know more about Santosh and the different junctures in his life. I had a very different take, especially with the whole parental support. Like, my mom was always there with me, because I had a habit of starting in the middle of the night. So my mom would wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning along with me, and she would just sit there, like, because after a point, even my mom probably did not understand certain science concepts or maths or whatever it is. But wherever that she could help me read and revise, she always did that. But she woke up just to be with me, sit with me for those 3-4 hours before the exam, and ensure that probably I didn't fall off to sleep, and ensure that I did my entire revision and I got through all my topics or whatever that there was for the exam. And that is the support that I got from my mom. And when my dad was there, he would drop me to school. Like, no buses at that time. My dad would physically come, drop me to school, and kind of pick me up so that I don't lose time in between, so that I can quickly come home, maybe sleep for a couple of hours, and then start studying. So that was always there. But then on the flip side, when when the marks would come out and when the results would come out, and when he would find out, okay, this is how much I got, and this was my rank in my class. My dad's immediate question would be, who came first, right? And it's that classic case, right, that people only remember the guy who came first or the girl who came first. Nobody after that. And I kind of lived that in my school, through my school years at least, that you're constantly aiming for the first. And even if you didn't hit the first rank, everyone was very interested in knowing who came first, right? So now you can imagine what those parents also think about their kids. My question is, what have they done with their lives? Have they done extremely well? Are they in the commerce or the science field, or whatever it is? Did they continue their progression of being an A+ student? We don't know. But at this point, Santosh has clearly proved the point that, hey man, you don't need marks to get where you want in life. And I think that's just a beautiful piece of story. right there. You don't need marks, you just need passion, you just need an understanding of what you're looking at, and once you've recognized it, just go ahead and do it.
Oh yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you, man. It's all about understanding, and like I said earlier about the balance. The thing is, as I got older, I realized how important marks were, or how not important marks were in my life, right? Because uh, I think in the last year of my college, I had already started, working on events more specific to like music with a friend of mine in Dubai. And I don't know how, but what used to happen was I would attend classes, then go work with him. We'd go like have meetings with clients and things like that. And that was my like, you know, on the job kind of education or training, if you may. And by that time, I already knew that, by the time I graduate, this is the kind of work I want to get into: marketing, events. Uh, by then, I had decided that, I just needed to graduate. It didn't matter like what was my grade, because, this was college at this point, right? I just needed my degree. And I still remember a week after I graduated, I had already started like doing work. And I was like, had a flight ticket and everything. And I was like, wow, so this is what it's like when you travel for work. Like, this is the thing. You're not like, rushed up with family and things like that. Uh, yeah. And then I think a few months later, I went and traveled and did my first internship in Poland, which was another turning point in my life, without a degree. So I never attended my graduation ceremony because I was a few thousand kilometers in another country working. So yeah, it was very strange, but I think by that point I realized that it's the personality you are, the kind of work that you do, the kind of potential that people see in you is what they matters more than having a piece of paper with your name on it and a bunch of numbers.
Peter, if I was an HR executive right now, I would have hired you right away. Because that was such an HR answer to give, right? That stop looking at my marks, look at my abilities, look at my personality, see what I can do. And I think that is what we need to do when we are preparing our kids, right? That you need to go beyond the mark sheet now. Now in the real world, right? People are going to look at you and you alone, and not the kind of paraphernalia that you carry around you. So
yeah, I mean,
good point, Peter.
I honestly tell you, the only time I really look at my mark sheets or my degrees or grades is when every time I get a new job and they ask a copy of it, and
correct, exactly.
and then it's like to me it's like that horror script where you're like, wait, I got only so many marks in this subject. Wow. And you actually feel at that point like you want to go back and tell the teachers back then that, hey, I turned out all right. It wasn't all about like, this is not the be all and end all of my existence. And unfortunately, it takes you that many years. It takes you that many experiences and journeys to go through to come to that realization.
And even the whole aspect of failing is so important. Failing for some reason is not encouraged that much, because the amount of learnings that you get from failure is just tremendous. It's so powerful as a force, right? Because when failure hits you, whatever it is, whether it's losing a job or whether it's getting rejected or whether it's failing, the smallest things, you find failure in the smallest things. And the first thing you ask that person is, how did it happen? Why did you let it happen? You shouldn't have let that happen, right? You've gone into persecution mode, as opposed to sitting down and say, wait, how do you think that happened? Let's introspect. So you see the difference, right? You're asking the same question, but your emotional state differs a lot, because failure doesn't happen just by itself, and it cannot be pinned on you as an individual. There are many parameters that are involved, and I think that's very important to recognize. I'll give you a very short example. I used to love chemistry, right? So in the 10th standard or in the 9th standard, I don't remember. I think, sorry, it was the 9th standard. where I actually failed my chemistry class by 2 marks, right? So I got 33 on 100 instead of 35, right? And I I remember crying. I remember crying because it was my favorite subject, and I remember when the marks were being distributed in class, everyone just gasped, right? Oh my god, another failed, right? And I just turned red, and I think after a while I went pale, and I remember walking up to the chemistry teacher and say, "Ma'am, just give me 2 more marks. I can't face my parents that I failed, and it's the first time I failed, and that's it's just not right." And she's turned around and said, yes, you failed. So what? If I give you grace marks right now, you will always get used to the fact that it's okay to ask for grace marks even in life later. I'm sorry, but I will not give it to you. Work hard and pass later. I'm not. And she dismissed me in less than 2 minutes, and that really hit me so hard. But I learned, Peter. I learned after that what it's like to fail and then kind of get up again, right?
So wait, so you said you learned from it. So what did you get on the next chemistry exam then?
I'm glad you asked, Peter. I actually scored a 90 on 100.
Wow.
Yeah, it shook me that how can I fail at something that I thoroughly enjoy, and it shook me to the core. And I studied really hard and I concentrated. See, I didn't need to study so much because I knew my concept, but I just concentrated this time, and I got that score. So yeah, I mean, it's totally worth it. And the love for studying more, like the love for studying further, I think that needs to be a point that we kind of need to drive. And that's why I invited Harshad Palsule, a very good friend of mine. We studied in college together, and he has a cool story as well. I'd like you guys to hear him out, and then we can chat about it, Peter.
Okay, let's talk about marks. Uh, it feels like a term used to both celebrate an achievement and, measure battle wounds. I always look at it that way. So has it really had an impact on my life or career? Not really. And what we've known each other for 10 years, and you know me, I just basically think that it's an irrelevant system. I mean, you're using numbers to measure a person, and it just makes everything inhuman in so many ways. So if I could meet my younger self and talk to him about marks, the one thing I would tell him is not to worry, because I still was stressed from the pressure to conform. And if I could relieve that stress at that point in my life, I think I could have I think I could have started my journey as a storyteller and filmmaker a lot earlier. And we've been discussing this, my choice to study further, and honestly, the excitement is real. Being able to learn new ways to turn creative concepts and dreams into reality. Tell stories that have been in my head for decades now. These, my wild imagination running free, basically, all thanks to my parents. And through the entire process, the application and selection by the college, not once did they have any doubts because of what I scored on some arbitrary test 20 years ago. They saw what I have done and saw how eager I was to do more of what I love, and were very happy to take me in. So between numbers and battle wounds and scars, I'd choose the latter because those have better stories to tell. So yep, that's pretty much it, man. I hope this helps you in your podcast, and all the best. And yeah, I'm sure there are so many varying perspectives of this, but this is my perspective, and of course these are completely my views, and I guess it should be taken that way.
I kind of resonate with Harshad, considering I did my MBA when I was nearly 30. And it was one of those things that I never thought I would do, honestly, because when I finished my graduation, I swore that I wouldn't step inside any academic institution again, and I was done studying and all of that. But I guess a few years in the corporate world of working made me realize that I have to change my thinking. And yeah, at 30, like I talked about on the previous episodes about me doing my MBA before becoming a dad. But yeah, I completely agree. I mean, in terms of, I don't think I'm going to stop now with just the MBA. Probably going to do some more studies of sort, if not like, a PhD. And as parents, I think, we're constantly learning, right? And uh, hence that is something that we can pass on to our kids. What do you say, Nadir?
Peter, last night before sleeping, I saw this quote. I was reading this quote on social media. I think one of those Instagram, Facebook, typical quotes, where it said that parents also learn from children. Just look at your patience level. And it just hits you, right? And it's so true, because learning is not one way. It is not just your prerogative as a parent to teach, because it has to be reversal as well. When you learn about your children more, then you can also change your input um, towards your children, and it's a cycle. And I feel that whoever thinks that I've learned enough in life, now that's it, now I just have to start applying those things, in my opinion, I don't think you'll progress in life. Because if you stop learning, then that's finished. Things are changing so rapidly in our country, in the world, in terms of technology, in terms of mental understanding. So many things are changing, and if you don't stay up, right, if you don't catch up, then then it's going to be damn tough for you to kind of live your life. I mean, we need to see ourselves as softwares, because softwares have upgrades every single time. The frequency obviously changes, so you just have to see yourself as upgrading your brain software as well at any given point of time. And I think Harshad kind of teaches us that, in a way, that even at the age of 35, he wants to learn more. He wants to study more, not because he wants a degree and he'll get a great job. No, he's never been that kind of a person. I've known him for a very long time now. And for him, it's not the degree, it's about acquiring knowledge. It's about acquiring new sets of skills. It's about upgrading his skills. And kudos to him that he's found the time to do this at the age of 35, and it's just brilliant. I think it should be a lesson to everyone out there that you don't need to stop. Learning can happen at any age, at any time, at any place. Peter, we read that story yesterday about the grandmother from Meghalaya who graduated at the age of 52. And
Yeah.
what an inspiring story.
Yeah, that's damn cool, man. Really cool grandmom.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So, Nadir, we've talked a lot. We've heard different perspectives. And it's been quite great, as parents, we're getting to hear from, different perspectives and different kind of people. So I want to wrap up with the same question we asked our guests. If you had to go back, all those years and give one piece of advice or talk to yourself, what would you say?
Now that today you're 15, 16 years old, that means you must have got 75% in your 10th standard exam, and you're probably hustling to get into that in college, right, where you have the great crowd and decent with studies as well, and probably you're hustling and trying to find out ways to kind of do that. But I can assure you that you did get into the college that you probably wanted, and you do decently well. But it leaves you at a point where you decide now what you want to do. But let me tell you this, that no matter what you did back then, right, whatever choices that you've made, you're doing pretty well for yourself. And not because of the degrees that you've got, or not because of the masters that you did. It's because of your personality. It's because of who you are as a human being and how you've changed and attuned yourself to the environment around you. That is what has made you, and not the marks that you've got, right? Not because you were an above average student and people kept asking that, hey, how much did you get in your 12th standard? How much did you get in your graduation? Nobody asked you that. Nobody will ask you that. So all I want to say is that just keep working on your personality, keep being a good human being, and just let marks be as is. That doesn't mean you don't study. I'm just saying that efforts need to be balanced out and you will do well. So yeah, that's me, Peter. What about you? How are you going to address your younger self?
So, like, if I have to go back in time, just to put it into context, I'd go back the day after my 10th results were declared. I was in Abu Dhabi at that time. I'd already started school there. My dad had taken me out for a drive because he had seen I was upset about the marks that I got. So, he was quite encouraging and all. So, if I have to revisit a moment, I'd like to go back then, and I'll tell myself, you know what, Peter, just listen to dad. He's got way more experience than you, and he's gone through way more than you. He knows exactly what he's talking about. Don't worry that you didn't do as well as you expected in the 10th or what people expected of you. What's going to happen is you're going to go on a great journey in the next 10 years, which will take you back to India, and you'll have no idea why. But just believe in the journey that you're going on and just experience as much as you can. Marks will come, degrees will come, things will happen, and you will go through so much that will really define you as an adult. And yeah, definitely don't worry about girls. As your future self telling you, you don't have a problem with that. So just believe in what you're going through and take it as it comes.
Yeah, I think we can all agree with our self-esteem issues.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that was our episode back from 2020 on whether marks or results matter. I hope you enjoyed this throwback of sorts. Let us know what you think. Do marks really matter or not in 2022? You can hit us up on popsinapod@gmail.com. Stay updated with all our upcoming episodes. Just search Popsinapod on any social media website. But that's all from us. We'll see you guys very soon. Cheers.